As it is here.
Are we good to begin? Can we start?
Yes.
I see a lot of participants still joining in, but I think it's time to start and they can still keep joining us. So hello and welcome to the webinar hosted by SAAR Education. The learning must go on. This is what SAAR always believes in. SAAR brings you another workshop on Jolly Grammar by the international author Sara Wernham, the mind behind Jolly Grammar, world's only active multisensory and spelling-based program. And I'm Shafali Juneja. I'm going to be the moderator for the workshop today. For Sara Wernham, Sara is a primary elementary school teacher at Woodlock Primary School in England. She has co-authored and developed many resources for Jolly Grammar. And it's been said, a wonderful quote by one of the writers and a doctor, Alfred Mercier, "What we learn from pleasure, we never forget." I repeat, what we learn from pleasure, we never forget. And that's how Sara will help us take us through the Jolly Grammar, which we learn from by enjoying it with lots of fun. Actually. Without much delay, I would turn the time in and let Sara speak now. And thank you so much, Sara, for being here. You can start.
Yes, Jolly Grammar. Grammar at one point in the UK rather fell out of favour. The idea was that because you spoke in English, you obviously understood how it worked, and therefore you didn't need to spend all this time looking at the nitty-gritty, at the rules of the language. That's not true if you're a native speaker, and it's certainly not true if you're learning something as a foreign or an additional language, because actually then you need to know what the rules are and how to apply things and where they go, as we'll see, hopefully, as the afternoon goes on. So I had a very rudimentary knowledge of grammar, I have to say, when Chris said, let's do a grammar programme. But we were very lucky to bump into a very erudite older lady by this time, she wouldn't mind me saying that, called Dr. Alice Coleman, who was actually a professor of, I think it was geography, but was so appalled by the standard of written English for the students at her university, she'd started writing her own grammar course. Anyway, she came along and she gave us a bit of a crash course in grammar, showed us what she's done and said, well, my dear, she said, I'm far too old and far too deaf. I can't be doing with any of this, but if you're prepared to take it on and do it, here you are, here's my bits of paper. And that's really where we started. We then experimented, as we always do, on the classes that we had, so actually with real live children. And everybody found they really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say I've become a grammar nerd, but I now understand the importance of it in a way that, quite honestly, I really didn't before. And as I say, we do hope that while we're teaching it, we're having fun as well, because that is the best way of doing it. And also, the more things that you can link together while you're learning, the easier it is for children to learn concepts and to remember them. And one of the things in Jolly Phonics, Jolly Grammar, is that we always try and build up the children's learning, knowledge and understanding just a little bit at a time and take them forward so that they always achieve success. We don't suddenly do a huge step or introduce something they've never done before. There's a lot of revision, which is not very trendy, but revision and repetition is a very, very powerful tool when teaching children, particularly young children. So, as I say, this developed over a number of years within the classroom and got written up into the grammar handbooks, was trialled in various schools, and we've been going for quite some time now. Originally, there was no idea that it would go further than well, certainly the UK, but with the advent of the internet and English on the whole being the language of the internet and things, with international schools, people doing voluntary work, going to work at schools all over the place, we seem to have gone to all sorts of places. It was quite brilliant. And whereas last year I thought would be a quiet year, as we've been in lockdown, not supposed to go out, not supposed to do things, everything's been cancelled. But I have to say, I have spent the last year talking to more people from more different countries than I ever have in the rest of my life. So while it's not ideal, there have been benefits for the last year. Some of them I hope will continue. Some things I hope to never experience again. But it is absolutely fantastic to be able to speak to reach out and to exchange ideas with, you know, such a diverse number of people across the world. So it's been an absolutely fascinating year, and I'm not quite sure what this year is going to bring, but hopefully, hopefully it will be good things for everybody. Right, I'm going to start my screen sharing now. And my PowerPoint. Right, I'm specifically talking about Jolly Grammar today, but in fact there isn't any difference between Jolly Phonics and Jolly Grammar. They just morph one into the other. We tend to talk about Jolly Phonics as being the first year, the beginning thing, and there is a sort of perception that because it's called Jolly Grammar it's something different, but it's not. It's all part of the same thing. And while we know a letter that's badly spelt doesn't give a very good impression of somebody, equally a letter with bad grammar doesn't give a very good impression of the person. So, you know, it's very important that we understand grammar if we're learning or speaking or writing a language. Now, we are Jolly Phonics. Okay, Jolly is actually the name of the gentleman who owns the company and published this scheme. There is a Mr. Jolly, which most of you all know because he's also done trainings for SAAR. Phonics actually means sounds, okay? And that is our base and our starting point because the words we speak are made up of sounds. This sounds very logical. Writing is a way of encoding those sounds using little symbols called letters so that we can put that down on a piece of paper and somebody who is not in the same physical place with us can read exactly what we want them to hear rather than having to pass things down orally, a bit like Chinese whispers, a little change here, a little change there. You're not always certain that the message that comes through the end, having passed through several different people, will be actually what you want to say. Reading is just the decoding of those squiggles on the paper so that you can get the sounds, you can get the words, and you can get the understanding of what is said. So if that is what reading and writing is, then it is obvious that that is how we should teach, through these sounds and by teaching the code, because, well, otherwise you're not following logic. And also, if you think of the number of words there are in English, if you have to learn every single one, holding up the old flashcards, there's an awful lot of words to learn. I couldn't do it. I don't think anyone of you could do it. So let's make life simple, okay? Now, I love this slide or this quote. If a child memorizes 10 words, the child can read 10 words. But if they learn 10 letters, they will be able to read 353 sound words, so that's words like cat, dog, 4,324 sound words, and 21,655 sound words, and so it will go on. By teaching them the sounds and by teaching them how to put them together and to listen for them in the word and write them down. You are giving the children the freedom to read anything that you put in front of them and to write anything that they would like to. They don't just have to stick to words that they already know, because as long as they can sound it out, they can have a go at writing it down. And you as a teacher can have a pretty good chance of being able to understand what they're trying to write. Might not be exact, because it takes a little bit of time to refine children's knowledge, but they have the power to be able to write exactly what they would like to. So as I say, we're a systematic synthetic phonics program. Systematic is easy because it's just, we build things up, we have a system, it's a logical process. Synthetic I never like, it's got called synthetic. For me, I always think of the word synthetic as being plastic, nylon, not real. When you look it up in the dictionary, it in fact means the putting together of elements to make a whole, which actually is exactly what we do. And obviously we have a phonics program, so it's a sound-based program. That's where the phonics come in. Let's say this is why we teach in this way. Now, a lot of people, we used to have a lot of children arrive at the school saying they'd done Jolly Phonics, and actually what they'd done was learn 42 sounds. They were pretty good when you held the flashcards up. They could say the sounds. Not so good often on what to do with the sounds. So hadn't been taught how to blend, hadn't been taught how to listen for the sounds in a word. And if they were having problems, 9 times out of 10, the problem was that although they'd learned them for reading, they hadn't actually learned them for when they were writing. So even though they could sound out the word, they knew it was k, actually then processing the idea of the k and remembering the letter k was where a lot of the problems came, because they hadn't had enough practice at it. So we are more than just learning the sounds, as you will see. Okay, it's not just for the first term or the first year. Again, Jolly Phonics, the Phonics Handbook is very well known, more well known, I would say, really, than the grammar program. But actually, Jolly Phonics is only the first step, the first year in our program, which in fact goes on for 6 years or 7 years, in fact, depending on if you count Jolly Phonics as part of it, which, as I say, we normally do. So we have 6 years worth of the grammar program, which follows on from the Phonics Handbook. 1 per year, we say. It either comes as a handbook, which is photocopyable, or it comes as the pupil books, which the children write in. The content is exactly the same. It's just how you wish to present it or how you wish to use it within your particular setting, which is a personal choice or a practical choice. And it builds up the scheme as we go, extending their knowledge from the very, very basic to, by the time they get to grammar 6, their knowledge of grammar is pretty good. I wouldn't say we teach everything, but we teach far more than anywhere else that I've seen. And the children, by the time they get to grammar 6, are dealing quite happily with quite complex grammar issues. And what we found over the years is quite often it's the teachers that have problems rather than the children, because the children are taken through it gradually, step by step, and sometimes the teachers are the ones who have to catch up and find out what's going on. So that can be quite amusing sometimes. But as I say, handbooks, pupil books, doesn't matter which you choose. They're just a different way of presenting it. Some people don't like having lots of photocopied bits of paper. But the choice is yours. It's the way it fits with your teaching. And that's another thing about our program. You know, our programme does adapt to lots of different situations and ways of teaching. You know, people can take it, and as long as you stick to the basic principles, then you can, you know, if you're a very creative, fantastic, funny teacher, it will work. If you're a bit more serious and straightforward, it will still work. Okay. As well as those two, actually only for Grammar 1 at the moment, we have some extra workbooks, which you can see here, which can provide extra practice for Grammar 1, either for homework or for extra support. But again, it's the same topics covered, but it's presented in a slightly different way, because that means that if they've seen something at school and you give it to them as homework, it's the same thing they're practicing. You know what they're practicing, but they don't say, I've done that sheet. Okay. As you can see, we cover the same sounds, we cover the same grammar concepts, and all the other things that were in Grammar 1, but say just in a slightly different way. So it provides just a different way in, and can be very useful to give, as I say, for homework, or if you're a parent who wants to support a child at school, then it's the same stuff, but it's not going to look the same. They're not going to think they're just repeating it at home. So the other thing I need to say is that we, as I say, we are a systematic, a progressive programme. So you need to make sure that before you start any level in the grammar, that the children are able to do so. Having done no grammar at all, do not just think my children are in year 3, therefore I'm going to do grammar 3. Okay, that will be very difficult. If your children have had grammar instruction and they're quite good at it, and they know the things that are in that handbook, that's fine, carry on with it. If they've had some, but not all, when you look at the front of the book, there'll be a list of topics covered. Have a look at those, fill in any gaps. If there's something that they don't know, either a little catch up at the beginning of the year, or as you go through the book, there's always revision in every lesson. Just pop it in at that point, revise a little bit they need to know, and carry on. Okay. But if they haven't done anything, it's very, very difficult, certainly in the higher levels, to just leap in and start teaching. So assess your children, decide what level they should enter at, what bits they've done. Do you need to do a bit of catch up? Do you need to do a bit of extra teaching? Maybe you need an extra week in here. Okay, that is your call, that is your decision as a teacher, because only you will know your children, your classes, and what they do actually do and don't know. So before they even start Grammar 1, what they should know is that the basic 42 letter sounds that we teach. If you attended Sue's training a few weeks ago, say basic 42 letter sounds, we get by with those quite happily. We teach one way of writing them initially. So the children should be able to do that. We teach how to blend regular words using them. Sadly, English is a bit of a dreadful language. We are, I say, language magpies. So we've taken words from all sorts of different languages, we've taken them into our language, and we've taken their spelling into. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but there are rules, and it makes it much easier if you learn those rules and regularize things, rather than having to learn everything as an exception. We learn how to sound a word, so say it slowly, listen for the sounds in them and write them down. But there are a few words that aren't regular, but that we desperately need because you can't form a sentence without them. So things like the, we, be, she. So we've termed those words tricky words, okay? They're not completely irregular if you know the rules. But at this moment in time, we haven't taught them those particular rules. So with me, it's a letter M and a letter E, but we have taught them it's a M, E. They don't know at that moment that the single letter E can say E. So at that moment in time, it's a tricky word. So we point out the tricky bit and we explain it to them. But there are a number of words that we do need. So we do teach those slightly out of turn, shall we say. But the first set of tricky words. So these are the things that we assume, that we hope that your children will know before you leap into the grammar programme. Every grammar handbook has a strapline, handbooks for teaching grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Okay, so it's not just grammar, it's not just spelling, it's not just punctuation, but in fact, all three are linked. They are overlapped. You can't really teach one without the other. You know, there's lots of spellings. Okay, yes, we need to go through all those, but many spellings are linked to grammar. Putting a suffix for the verb endings, for ed, for ing on the end of a word. Okay, it's a spelling rule, but it's also a grammar point. So as I say, there's lots of overlap, and that's why we teach them all together. Each handbook is set out the same, more or less. It has a teacher's page, which has lots of information. It doesn't matter what your level of knowledge or understanding is, because it supports you and gives you lots of, it gives you a revision section, it tells you how to introduce the lesson. So there's lots of help and support for the teachers there. That little wire bound notebooky thing at the top of each teacher's note page tells you things that you need. So if you need coloured pencils, if you need scissors, it's there. And as you go up the grammar, it also tells you on the bottom where that topic has been covered before. So if you need to do a bit of revision, if you need to put some teaching in, you can then look back and find out which sheets you might need without having to look it all up yourself. Okay, as I say, there's a lesson structure there with lots of information on. We do two, well, we say 2 lessons a week because that's how it works for us. 1 lesson for grammar, 1 lesson for spelling. We obviously have our children 5 days a week most of the day. If you don't do that, then you have to adapt accordingly, okay? You know, again, if you've got children in a learning centre and you might only see them once or a couple of times a week, or whatever it is, again, you know, you have to be flexible and work it out. And if you're only seeing them for a very short amount of time, it might take you 2 years to cover what somebody having a full-time class would cover in 1, okay? But that's the way of life, and we all have to adapt to the children and to the circumstances and the time that we have. And then there's always a page for the children, either in the pupil book or, as I say, a photocopiable one, for them to complete and to do, and some activities, because by doing things and using the knowledge you're teaching them, that is how the children will remember them. We hope to make it fun, because why should it not be? You know, just repeating things off rote or writing lots of things down just doesn't engage children. We are multisensory, we have actions, we have colours. We hope our page layouts and pictures and the way we present things are attractive for the children. So as you can see, as I say, it's our basic structure. It goes all the way through, lots of support. I like this quote. Don't they teach you how to spell these days? No, I answered. They teach us how to use a spell check. I'm getting on a bit now in life, but even when I was at school back in the 80s, there was always this thing that we weren't going to need to read and write because we were going to have computers, and computers were all going to do it for us. Well, we do have computers now. My daughter laughs when I say, you know, our telephone was stuck to the wall and you had a cord and there was no way you wandered about or took it up to your bedroom. You stood in the hall and everyone could hear your conversation. No texting, any of this sort of thing. But, you know, nowadays, they've all got their mobile phones, they've all got their iPads. Being able to write is just as important. I know we have got speech recognition, but maybe one day will take over completely, but it certainly hasn't yet. And I'm sure, like me, you've had not disasters, but you text something out with the predictable text turns it into something completely different that you really didn't mean. If you don't have that understanding, if you don't know that's the word that you want, then you're in trouble. You could send a text that is not good at all. So as I say, despite the fact we have all this technology, it is still very important. Computer screens, you still, on the whole, need to read the words on the computer screen. So no matter that technology one day may advance to that point, it still hasn't yet. So even with technology, it is very, very important for people to be literate, to be able to cope with the world and to get good jobs and to earn money and to progress in life. So in the Grammar Handbook 1, we go over the basic digraphs that we introduced in the Phonics Handbook in the first year. Okay, single letters are fine. Digraph sometimes cause a little bit of problem, not so much, but we go over them again. Teachers often have a bit more of a problem with digraphs. They think they'll save them to the end and teach them, but you can't write loads of words if you don't teach them from the beginning. And I always say, well, we don't not teach 12 because it's made up of a 1 and a 2. We don't not teach 25 because it's made up of a 2 and a 5 and we think it's too difficult. We're quite happy that we can teach numbers like that. This is the same. The children learn that when that, in this case, and the her come together, it makes a completely different sound, which is why it's a digraph, not a blend. And it goes shh, and that's what they learn. So we go over the one spelling at a time, and it is for spelling. They will have covered all of these in the first year. Some of them may be spelling using them, okay, and certainly with the digraphs, the straightforward digraphs. Some of them might not be, okay? But we are going over them primarily. They should be able to read words, but for spelling. Spelling is more difficult than writing, than reading. In reading, you have the word in front of you, so you have a clue. When you want to write something down, you have a blank sheet of paper, okay? And if you have no clue how to start or you're not sure, you've got to try it and do it. You haven't got any clues. The only clues you've got is all this knowledge that you've got in your head that you can apply. So we go over it one spelling, one digraph, one spelling at a time. We go over it with the class. You have a sheet like this. We talk about that particular spelling. We talk about all the words we can think of that have that sound in it. I make a big word bank up on my board. And again, if it's English as a foreign or an additional language, this is vocabulary. It's a good way of introducing vocabulary. Okay, if it is a completely foreign language and they're not hearing a lot of English around them, stick to a few very often used words, pick them out that are going to be useful for the children. Our spelling lists, which I will say a bit more about shortly, are made up of words that come out of the most frequently used words for children within English. So there is a reason for all of them. We found the school in which I used to teach, it's quite a deprived area, and we assumed that because they spoke English, they were from English-speaking families, that they knew all these words. But actually, when we started delving into it, we discovered that their vocabulary was very, very poor. Never assume anything. So we used to do lots of vocabulary work anyway, as I say, despite the fact that they were all supposedly native speakers, but it's a good way of expanding their vocabulary and making sure they know what they mean, not just the word, but what does it mean? So as I say, we go over them, and in Grammar 1, we do lots of making silly sentences. Again, as I say, the more things you connect to other things they know, the more likely they are to remember these things. So we have things like little I tie my tie, eat my pie, and lie down in a field to die. So we have a tie my tie, eating my pie, and we lie down in the field to die. Not very chirpy, I do realise, but if you have tie, pie, lie, die, you've got the words basically that use that IE. You've got tide, you've got magpie, but there are very few words. So it's a way of helping them remember, because they tie them together and you've got this little sentence. We used to have this one as well. I use this one. The snail with the painted tail waits for the train to Spain in the rain and hail. So again, if it's in that little sentence, if it's one of those words, it's an AI word. So it's helping the children to make choices. I make the sentences up. You can make the sentences up for the words that you want them to learn or that they need to learn. I either gave them a picture to colour in, or they would draw a little picture and write the sentence to help them remember it. I like to ride my bike. I just got fed up of correcting the sentence. I lick to ride my bicked. So L-I-C-K or L-I-C-E, or just so many variations. Okay, so I like to ride my bike, and again, they can draw a picture themselves on the bike, but you're putting that information in. And again, I like to take things off the page. I know we're teaching reading and writing, but we're teaching more than that. So I would do things like we would make when we were doing the I hop over E or the split digraph I. We would do kites. We would make kites. The children's kites we would paint, we do in art classes or something, and then we'd make the long tail, and they could add lots of words with the I hop over E digraph in them, draw little pictures next to the words if they wanted to, and then we could put them on the wall or hang them up, or they could take them home, share them with their parents. So again, rather than just writing a long list of words on a piece of paper, it just makes it a bit more fun. Every week on the spelling side, we have a spelling list. So in grammar 1 and 2, there are 10 words. As I say, there is a reason for them all. They're all chosen from the frequently used words list. The first 2 words are regular or very small words. Then the next word down has an initial or a final blend. Now, I said just now that a digraph is where the 2 letters come together and they make a different sound. A blend, which is often confused, is where it sounds like it sort of blends into each other, but the 2 sounds are both there. So it's not cl, a, p, which actually is what children often sound out when they do that. But if you say it slowly and listen carefully, clap, clap, both those sounds are there. They run into each other, like crab, they'll go cr, ab, but when you listen, cr, ab, both those sounds are there, so that's a blend. They come on the end of the word as well, so a word like belt, b-e-lt, b-e-lt, belt, okay? So we go over those, there's one a week, goes through, just gives a little chance to pick that up and to get the blending in. I know teachers who spend a lot of time going k-l, clap, b-r, bruh, bruh, b-r, sounding things out. I'm not that pedantic about it, but it, again, does often depend on the children and accent and various other things. So the third word has always got some form of blend in it. The next words will have the sound of the week in it. So shop, fish, shut, wish. We then go over the tricky words. Again, they should know these, but we are learning them for spelling. We are consolidating the knowledge that they've already got in there. We do 2 a week. And then in fact, in the handbook, there's also then a list that you can send home for an extra week or for a holiday, which has got all the tricky words that they've learned that term in. So again, lots of opportunities to consolidate, to repeat, to revise. And then the last word is always a longer word, because we want children to be able to tackle words of any length, not just to think I can only write little words, cat, dog, whatever it is. So right from the beginning, we challenge them, and we let, you know, we don't ever let them think that just because it's a long word they can't do it. So that's how the year 1 spelling list is made up. If you don't want to do it as a spelling list, use it as a vocabulary list. Okay, words for the children, not necessarily to learn for a spelling test, but to learn so they know the meaning of, so they know what they're talking about, so that you can sound them out. The other thing about spelling lists, quite often, I'm not a particularly good speller myself, or I wasn't until I got involved in this. So I'm a bit of a born again speller, because it's very easy if you know what you're doing, and it's very difficult if you don't and you're floundering around in the dark. Okay, there is no point in, on a Monday morning, for example, sticking a spelling list in a book or in a bag or in a child's hand, which then gets put in their school bag. Nobody does anything with it unless they happen to have good and attentive parents. And then on Friday morning, you give them a spelling test. Okay, you haven't seen the words for 5 days. They haven't done anything with the words for 5 days. Nobody's looked at them. Some of the children will do it because some of them will be natural spellers. Some of them will get not a lot because they're not, they haven't looked at them, nobody's helped them. Okay, so my spelling lists, I have them on laminated and have them on the wall, or with whiteboards, I have them in a corner of my whiteboard. They're there every day, and every day, sometimes a couple of times a day, whenever I have 5 minutes, we finished a little bit early before lunch, we're just waiting to go out to play, to go home for the evening, and I go over them. So we'll go, and I will point, am, g, et, get, k, l, ap, clap. Then we'll go the other way, am, and hold up a finger for each sound. And we go over that every day. So by the end of the week, when I actually give my spelling test, it's not really a spelling test at all, because they've gone over them so many times. You know, the idea is you want the majority of children to get 10 out of 10. It's not a trick. I don't want to trip them up and, you know, find out that they haven't learned them. I want to know that they all learn them and can do them. So as I say, I go over them in class at least once a day, sounding out and blending, and the majority of children always get 10 out of 10, which makes them feel very good, which is very good, because as a teacher, that's what my children should be getting. And I also report back, if I do send them home to the parents, I do always put in their spelling book what they get, because I always think, if I'm asking the parents to do something for me, as in to help their child, it is only polite to actually feed back to the parent, and not just every 6 weeks or at the end of the term 3 times a year or something. So I always feed back what they get, and I tend to try and indicate what it was that they got wrong. Normally, because there are so few children that are getting very much wrong at all, that's possible. If everyone was getting everything wrong, it would be a terrible task. But because they're not, because they're all achieving, you can actually do that. If I have a child who's struggling, I might just give them 5 spellings. It doesn't matter. And as I say, all I will say is who got all their spellings right. If they're a child who's only got 5, they get all their spellings right. So, you know, they go out to play first or whatever it is, just like the child who got 10 out of 10. So I will adjust my spelling list accordingly if I need to. Because all the time you need to respond to your children, not try and force your children to fit into the program that you're using. So again, people look at spelling tests as being, oh no, not the spelling test. They don't have to be scary. We can make them a very enjoyable and successful experience for everyone. We also spend a lot of time in the first year on vowels, and actually in all years subsequently to that, because vowels are one of the things in English that are interesting, okay? That's where a lot of our troubles are. We talk about our vowel forest, and don't get lost in the vowel forest and be careful of the vowels. Consonants, we only have 5 vowels in English, 5 vowel letters. Y is sometimes used as a vowel letter. It's more of a cousin, but we say we have 5. The other letters are consonants, and they generally, particularly when they're by themselves, always say the same sound. It is the vowels that change their sound, or when they come together, combine, do different things. So they're the things we need to pay particular attention to. So say we have our vowel hand. I have rubber gloves in my class, and we actually write the letters on them, so the children can put the rubber gloves on and point. Parents get a bit upset when I write on them with felt tip pens, but we learn and we go a, e, o, a. Short vowel sounds, okay? But the vowels also have a long sound. So we have those at the bottom of the fingers, and the long sounds are A, E, I, O, and U. And as I say, these are the way we introduce spelling them first. And then we can also teach a little rule that gets you out of trouble so many times for spelling. It is not true. It's one of the best rules, right? If A doesn't work, try A. If A doesn't work, try E. If I doesn't work, try I. If O doesn't work, try O. If A doesn't work, try U. Okay, so a word like acorn, if you sound it out, it would be acorn. Well, that's not a word. If A doesn't work, try A. Acorn, yeah, that's the word, okay? For reading, that is the best rule you can ever teach your children, and will cover a multitude of sins. You, I have to say, it can be a bit tricky. And again, there's an accent thing as well here, because you often comes out as oo. And in fact, although I grew up in London, where I live now, up in Suffolk on the east coast, on the bump, on the east side of the UK. Round here, the locals, there is no such sound as you. Everything is oo. So I would say or oo. I sort of link them together because they come up quite a lot together. And I say particularly here, that you sound is never spoken. So that's a little tweak or tip that's quite handy to remember, because things like flute, it's spelt with a U. It should be a U sound, but because of the way the words are said and the letters in them, it comes out as an oo. So we often go you, because that reminds the children that is happening. As I say, we teach one way of making a sound first. So the A is introduced to begin with as A-I. So A, we have this action. Okay, then we introduce the main common alternatives for that sound. So in this case is A-Y, which again, we go over in grammar 1 and we look at words that take that sound. A-Y normally comes on the end of words. Except for a few words, one of which is crayon, which of course the only place you ever find crayons are in primary classrooms. So we put that on there because that reminds them, but on the whole, the A sound, the A-Y spelling comes when the A sound is on the end of a word, okay? And the split digraph, the A hop over E. When we come up to grammar 2, what you're doing then is not looking at each individual spelling sound as such, but for the vowels, you're asking them to make a choice. So is this word spelled A-I, A-Y, A hop over E? So then they're beginning to make choices. We also introduce the spelling, more alternative spellings for that sound, but that are more unusual. Okay, so the E-I-G-H, like in neighbour and things, doesn't come in very many words, but we still need to cover it. So we introduce them as we go up. As we've just said, the A saying A, and then we cover the ones that sometimes spelling patterns only come up once or twice in words in English. So then we look at all the odd ones that are still left without having been covered. So we build up their knowledge as we go, from the most useful, the most used, to the less, either the less familiar or the less used. So we do that for all of the vowel sounds and the other spelling patterns as well. We keep coming back, we revise, we add a bit more knowledge. So in grammar 2, so what we're doing is we're asking this, their knowledge is increasing, we're asking them to make a choice. So all the grammar 2 spelling pages, or majority of them, look like this. We do introduce other sounds. It's not just all the vowel spellings. We refine their basic knowledge of digraphs and alternatives. As I say, like we've got here, is it coin, C-O-I-N, or is it coin, C-O-Y-N? And again, it's like the A-I and the A-Y. O-Y normally comes on the end of a word. So again, they have to look at them, they have to make choices. If they're not certain, we tell them to look them up in a dictionary. Again, we're just trying to refine their skills, giving them the knowledge they need and things they need to function as independent learners. So we ask them to choose the correct spelling. As I say, we do cover other spelling patterns, some of which they will have come across, like the soft C and the soft G, like in ice or gym, and some of which will be new. We have, again, a spelling list. This time they have to fill in the spelling that's missing. Again, always having to do something, because in doing something, either in writing it or thinking about it or moving things around, they are more likely to learn and more likely to remember. Similar makeup to the spelling list. The first 2 are completely regular. The next ones have got the sound for the week in, and there's always, again, a longer word. And then the last 2 are, we call them word families, but we go over useful words to the children. So it quite literally family words: mother, father, brother, aunt, niece, nephew, months, numbers. So we go over, we just make sure that they really understand and know how to do these things. There's a bit for comprehension where it says choose a word. It's called a closed procedure, but the words to fill in those sentences come from the spelling list. And then the last section at the bottom is normally some sort of revision. Could be spelling, could be connected to the grammar, but again, applying the knowledge and the things that they have learned. So all the time using what they've learned. We don't just teach it and go away, or teach it and never talk about it again. Everything is constantly used. And so we progress on up through the grammar books. Grammar 3 and 4 are quite similar. They have 2 pages rather than 1, because obviously the children are older, more capable, can do more things. Again, activities for the children to do. These ones are anagrams. We have crosswords. We have word searches. Again, trying to make it fun for the children, not just, write this word down 10 times or things like that. We've gone up to 18 spellings. Again, if your children is struggling, the first 6 should be regular. Okay, so they're fine. They should all be able to cope with those. The next 6 might have some more alternative spellings, in, a little bit more difficult. The last 6, they're longer, they might be more challenging, the meaning of them might be more challenging. So again, you can adjust that to the children in your class, but you don't need to have 3 different spelling lists for your bottom, average and top children, okay? You just go through, when they get to the one that they finish at, they stop. So it helps the teacher time as well. So again, lots of illustrations and pictures on that sheet, which illustrate the words within the program and things. So, and again, a little bit of revision for the other things we've been doing down the bottom. The children get very used to the structure of these. They enjoy doing them, and they can you know, just get on themselves. Minimal amount of teaching once you've explained what they're doing. As I say, they have a second page which will have dictation at the top. Now, dictation sounds very boring, sounds very formal, sounds very old-fashioned, but dictation is a very powerful tool for 2 reasons. One, if I said to you now, write me a sentence about the winter or something or other, or write me a story about going to a party. I do this in trainings where I've got people physically in front of me, and the look of horror they give me is quite amusing. But we ask children to do this all the time and think it's marvellous that they're being so creative, but we wouldn't want to do that. So to begin with, and again, if it's a foreign or an additional language, it's a way of helping them get used to writing and writing sentences. You are telling them what to write. There is an awful lot between thinking of what you want to write as a whole sentence, then thinking of each word in turn, then breaking that word down into sounds, by which time some of them have forgotten what the whole sentence was that they wanted to write anyway. So by you dictating it, it takes some of that pressure off them, and they get used to writing and to writing in sentences. Even if you're a native speaker, writing in sentences can be an issue. We'll have a bit of a look at that later on. And also, you are controlling the words that they are using, so that you know, because you have given them that sentence, that they should be able to spell all of those things. So you can use your tricky words. We suggest dictation sentences in the teacher's page for you to use. They use the tricky words that they've been learning. They use the spellings they've been learning. So again, it's a way for you to assess. If you see, oh, look, they spelled that tricky word wrong there, so you know you need to go over it. Oh, you know, the majority of them really haven't got that spelling pattern yet because that word's been spelt wrong. Again, you can pick up and assess as you're doing these things. And then again, just activities for them to do to get them used to doing the things. As I say, not just once, don't just teach it and move away. It's got to be repeated and used because otherwise, you know, you forget. It's like we all learn a computer program and it's great while we're using it. And then you go away for a couple of weeks or a new one comes in or you move job and then you come back to something you think, you know, I can't remember how to do that now. Okay, it's just the same with children. Once we've taught them something, keep on repeating it, keep on using it, expect it to come out in their writing. Grammar Handbook 5 and 6, again, they sort of go in pairs really. Grammar 1 and 2, Grammar 3 and 4, and Grammar 5 and 6. Again, 2 pages. Set out much the same. Again, increasing in difficulty, increasing in spelling patterns. More spelling patterns now, moving away from sounds because we've gone over most of those. And here we start, we've always been teaching them how to spell long words. As I said, we've always given them long words and told them not to be afraid of them. But if you can see down the left-hand side where the blue arrow is, we break the words down, we teach them how to break the words down into syllables. I will come back to syllables later. When you get a long word, that is generally how you go about approaching it. But again, it's not often something that is taught as such. So in Grammar 5, where the words are getting longer, So the first term, the first 12, we break the words into sentences, and then we put the lines underneath, and the children have to copy the 2 bits of the syllable underneath. The next term, we just write the word, but we give them a clue because we write, we've got the lines underneath, so they know if they've got 4 lines that they need to break the word into 4 bits. And then the final term in term 5, okay, it's up to them. So they get the word and they have to write it on the line, but they have to write it in the syllables, they have to write it in the bits themselves. So we gradually build up their knowledge of how they tackle long words and how to spell them. And again, lots of activities and pictures and things on the page. I'm quite a visual learner. I'm not into learning styles because it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, some people are better at remembering visual things, but you know, at the end of the day, you can't just learn in one way. You have to take all these things on board and actually practice at the things that you're not very good at. So lots of interest, lots of activity for the children to do, and building up their knowledge the whole time. I'm going to move into the grammar side. As I said, grammar, spelling and punctuation, and all of them are overlapping. So although we've looked at the spelling sheets and the basic spelling patterns, we are going to keep coming back to spelling even within the grammar program, okay? Why teach grammar? Why teach Jolly Grammar? Or Jolly Phonics? Right, first of all, or one of the really good reasons, particularly if it's being taught as an additional or foreign language, is accent, okay? A good accent. Because we're teaching through sounds, and because we're teaching young children, they can make those individual sounds without a problem, okay? Your palate sets at age about 7, and it can then be very difficult to make sounds that you have not been making. There are African languages which are made up of clicks. As an adult, you will never be able to learn that with any degree of fluency or to reproduce a sound, because your palate is just not being set up to do that. You've not learned those sounds, your mouth. So it's a good accent. We have the children who came to our school who were under the speech and language department would be, they would sign them off the first term and say, well, you're going to do what we would do anyway. They're not having to do it as extra homework, and they're doing what all the other children are doing. And for the majority of children, they never had to go back because they practiced all these sounds. So they have a good accent, which can be very, very important in terms of when you're going for a job. The better accent that you have in a language, the more fluent you are, you know, you are likely to have a higher earning potential. We use a wide vocabulary, okay, not just nouns. A lot of teaching programs, I was taught French a bit like this at school. We drew lots of pictures. We wrote lots of names of things. You know, we'd go around the bathroom, sink, toothbrush, toothpaste, mirror, bar. Putting words together into sentences and other such things, a bit more problematic. So, like I say, a whole range of different types of words and using them the whole time. Because I always say we are very, very greedy, because we want to ensure that the children that are taught by us, by Jolly Phonics and Grammar, can read, write and speak English. Not just one, not just two, okay? Don't just speak it fluently, but have no idea how to write it. Can't just read it, but again, can't get the page words off the page and enunciate them to speak it. So lots of speaking within lessons as well as reading and writing, okay? Not just writing a load of words on a piece of paper and then the teacher marks it, but within the lessons they should be speaking so they become confident at speaking in front of other people, other children, as well as writing and as well as being fluent readers. Okay, and the other thing with grammar, as I say, grammar is the rules of the language. And we want to make sure that we and the children we teach write exactly what we mean. This was one of the things that it brought home to me, the importance of grammar once I started learning about it. I started looking at things I'd written and thinking, I don't mean that. I know what I mean, but when I'm reading it back now, I haven't actually put that down and made that clear. I have some examples. Okay. Does anybody have a wheelchair, electric or pushed by a relative they no longer want? Now, the person writing, there was an advert from a paper, the person writing that knew exactly what they meant. I know what they meant. It's the wheelchair they no longer want, not the relative, okay? But what they've actually written is it pushed by a relative they no longer want, okay? It's the use of grammar. Sometimes it's just changing words around, sometimes it's punctuation, okay? But making sure that what you say is clear and is what you mean, okay? I would like a sandwich cheese, okay? Many languages, the adjectives, cheese in this case, comes after the noun it's associated with or describing, okay? In English, that's not the case. Our adjectives come before. Now, while if you went up to a cafeteria or whatever and said, I would like a sandwich cheese, you would get a sandwich cheese, you would be understood. However, automatically they would know that you were not a native speaker, that you know your English isn't fluent. Okay? I would like a cheese sandwich. So again, by knowing these little rules, we won't make these mistakes, and we don't have to learn just phrases. We can apply the little bits of knowledge that we know to all of the words that we know. This is a little bit of a joke. Let's eat grandpa. Do we really want to eat grandpa? My friend Vowels in South Africa always laughs because she had one child who the head came in halfway through a lesson when they were doing something like this, and he turned around and said to the head, "Shh, it's important, it's life or death for grandpa." Okay, so let's eat grandpa. No, we don't want to eat grandpa. Put that comma in, let's eat grandpa. Okay, so it's important for clarity. We need to know how to use these things, and we need, just the same as we do for spelling, to build the grammar knowledge up in a logical way, a systematic way, so the children learn and understand. We start off really simply in grammar 1 by looking at capital letters and sentences, okay? We go over the capital letters for formation because quite often we don't spend as much time on the formation as capital letters as we do for the lowercase letters. And the other thing is, children often learn them as A, B, C, D, E, and don't realise that actually they make the same sound as the lowercase letters as A, B, C, D, E. So we go over and we talk about the sound and the name for each letter, and the uppercase, the capital, and the lowercase formation and letter for each of those, and make sure the children all know those at the beginning of the year. Now, we don't use the alphabet initially because it doesn't have all the 42 sounds in, it just has the 26 letters. Okay? The alphabet is useful for ordering things. It's not actually much useful for anything else. Okay, we do teach the alphabet. We do teach it in the first year, but we just sort of teach it almost as a song, as a thing that they learn. In Grammar 1, we start using it. We have divided it into 4 groups. They're called dictionary quarters because apparently, I haven't done the research myself. If you look at the English Oxford Dictionary, which is the arbiter of English words, if you divided the English Oxford Dictionary, which I believe goes on to several rooms of books, into quarters, the first quarter of words begin with A to E. The next quarter lot begin with the letters F to M and so on. So we've divided the alphabet into those 4 groups. They each have a colour, and the children get used to saying the alphabet. I ask them what colour a particular letter is. What colour is J? What colour is J? What colour is W? What colour is N? What colour is T? What colour is A? What colour is U? So I use sound and name, and we go over it, and they get really used to it. I get them to come up and point to the letters. This is a poster that I have in my class. So again, lots of interaction and physical things. Putting cards with the letters out into order. We can do timing. We can play as a game. Who can do it the fastest, get the letters in order. Lots of colours, lots of activity, because we are going to use this knowledge of the alphabet to train them how to use a dictionary. Okay, we don't just assume they know how to use a dictionary. And because of this, our dictionary is colour coded by these letters, by these colours that we've seen, which will help them to use it. So the pages with the words from A to E are, the edge of the page is red. Okay, so we teach them by keep going back. The first lesson in every half term is about using the dictionary, and they get very used to it. I had a parent at the end of one of my year 1 lessons come in and say to me, do you know what my daughter's asked for her birthday? Do you know? No. A dictionary. Couldn't believe that a 6-year-old wanted a dictionary, but they love playing about with words, with looking at words and things. And this, we teach them how to use it. I have them on the desk because, again, it's no point having to go across the room to find your dictionary. They're on the table, they're easily accessible, and the children learn how to look words up, and not just to start with A and turn the pages over until they get to M an hour and a half later or whatever it is. They start opening the pages. If it's M and it's in the yellow section, we open at the yellow section. If it's at the beginning of the yellow section or the end of the yellow section. So they actually learn and start using the dictionary in a way that makes it easy for them. As I say, dictionaries are learning about words. We've got the spelling. Next to it, with the slashes, okay, normally, this is an accepted convention, a slash refers to the sound, so the pronunciation, and we use the original spelling in order to indicate the sound. In fact, it's the same in this case. You've got the definition of the word, and then at the end, where it says noun, obviously, you've got the part of speech. So there are lots of different things that you can actually use a dictionary to find out. So we teach them all about this and get them interested in words and in using dictionaries and making it easy for them, which means they're more likely to do so. Okay. So as I said, we start simply, capital letters and sentences. They know the letter names, they know the formation, they know the sounds. And then we say to them, where else do you see capital letters? Okay, they normally see capital letters at the beginning of sentences. So then we start talking about sentences. Sentences start with a capital letter and end with a full stop, and they have to make sense. Okay. So we do a lot of work, as I say, just talking about sentences. And actually, I do a lot of work making them say sentences, because it's very difficult to expect them to write a sentence if they can't speak in a sentence. So news, for example, I will say, tell me one sentence. And what small children tend to do, native speakers particularly, I went to my granny's and I had a cup of tea and we played in the park, and it runs on and on and on and on and on. So what we say is we want one sentence. So I went to my granny's, and as I go to say, and that's your full stop. Okay, so again, physical doing of it before you ask them to do anything on a piece of paper. We have scrambled sentences. So you have a picture and you cut out the words, and they have to rearrange the words into a sentence. Okay, and again, doing it physically is more interesting. Doing it physically, you can then go and check that they've got it right. So you're not going to have 3 sets of crossings out where they haven't got it quite right, or so many rubbers that they've gone through the page. Okay, so they can either then stick the words down and write the sentence, or just write the sentence. Again, you can laminate them and have them made up in sets, and then they can use them, you know, you can use them as an activity within your class, and so they should be able to unscramble that sentence. They know that the I is going to come at the beginning. They know that B is going to come at the end, because even though it's got a capital letter, it's got that full stop on the end. So there are little clues, you know, that you're teaching them to look for and to help you. And you can talk about sentence structure with them. You know, if they've got it wrong, you can talk about why they've got it wrong, right? I, B, can, see, a. You can say to them, well, read that, and does it make sense? So, you know, you're not just saying that's wrong. You can talk to them, you can explain it, you can work out, you know, what bit they're not understanding. You can also explain how changing words, changing the sentence structure can make a difference. So if I swap these 2 words over, not I can see a bee, but can I see a bee? I've got a question. It's the same words, but I've now got a question. Can I see a bee? And okay, my voice rises at the end as well. But again, it's just talking about things and examining it and looking at it and working out, why is it doing that? How is it doing that? Okay, I've got a quick one for you to do. You can have a go at unscrambling that sentence. Although that last sentence looked easy, if you're a small child and you're not used to doing it, we forget sometimes as adults how difficult what we consider an everyday activity is. So just give you a little we'll see how you got on. Okay, it's quite difficult, you know, to rearrange those words. And again, if you've got them as little bits of paper, it's much easier to manipulate them round and to do. So bee buzzed loudly as she collected pollen from the beautiful flowers. As you can see there, they're in colours. Now, the colours do have a meaning. As I say, we are multisensory. There are actions for the parts of speech, and we also assign them a colour, which means we can do something called parsing, which means we identify what each word is doing within the sentence, which is why these are those particular colours, as you will see as we go through the rest of the course of the afternoon, and we will come back to parsing as well. So again, lots of experience of sentences, of speaking in sentences, of writing in sentences, of deciding whether it is a sentence. We have a very simple definition of a sentence to begin with. Okay, we are not grammarians at university level. We are dealing with small children. We are dealing with young children, and if they get a capital letter, a full stop, and it makes sense in the middle, you know, I'm happy that is a sentence, and they are happy that that's a sentence. I know there are other bits that we need to add onto it, but we don't need to add them onto it at this point in time. Then we say to them, well, the other place you see capital letters, of course, is at the beginning of your name. Okay, now, name words are called nouns. The colour is black. And proper nouns, so names like your name, are proper, they are important, so they need a capital letter. Also things like days of the week. So we teach about proper nouns. So the colour is black, and we have an action, which is we touch our forehead to indicate proper nouns, which is actually the British Sign Language for name as well. So again, we will talk about that. And addresses, places, countries, they are all proper nouns. And again, depending on the age of the children that you're teaching, you can do you know, a number of different things. You could do diaries, because then you're practicing the days of the week. Poems with the days of the week. Solomon Grundy, born on Monday, all these sorts of things. And looking at addresses. Okay, children often find it quite incredible that addresses are written in a different way in different countries, but they are. Okay, you can actually get them to write letters or postcards to themselves, the school, different members of their family. Okay, but you can look at the way different countries write their names and addresses. This is how we write them in the UK. You know, America has zip codes and PO boxes and things. They're all different. So it's an opportunity to widen their knowledge of the world and of things that go on in the world, as well as just teaching grammar. You can use it particularly for older children, say depending on what age you're coming at them, and things are revised as we go. Creatively, okay? Captain Hook from Peter Pan, where does he live? Can you make up an address for him? You know, lots of books have addresses for the characters in them that are, you know, reflect something about them, their character, where they live, you know, whatever. So you could do imaginative addresses for characters. As well as proper nouns, there are things like proper adjectives. So not only England, but English. It's a proper adjective. It describes something coming from England. I will also need a capital letter. India is a country. Indian is a proper adjective that equates with it. So we look at those, we go over those. Again, lots of opportunities for expanding knowledge and things. We probably can't do visits to different countries, even if we don't have COVID. We certainly can't at the moment, but we can visit lots of places with Google Earth, okay, and look at the places, look at the countries, talk about them, talk about, you know, so lots of opportunities, as I say, just to come off the page and to expand the children's knowledge of the world. We also have common nouns. Okay, if it's not important, you know, everything has a name, things have a name. Chairs, it's the name of a thing that you sit on. You know, cat, it's the name of a small furry creature that we might have as a pet. Okay, lamp, it's the name of something that gives us light. But they're not important, so they don't need a capital letter. So we have common nouns, which are also black because they're another form of noun. The action is just your hand on your head, not a specific name. It's your hand. And we talk about Inky, and we talk about Inky taking pictures of something, because if you can take a picture of it, it is probably a noun. We'll come back to this in a minute. Again, we are talking about small children. We introduce concepts just one at a time and simply. Okay, so it's probably a noun. As the teacher, another little trick is if you can put an a or a the in front of it, it is probably a noun. So a rabbit, the rabbit. A hen, the hen. We've also got an, which we do go over when you use a and an. Okay, an is when you have a vowel sound at the front of it. So an umbrella, not at umbrella. So it's just a little tip if you're thinking, wondering about a word in a sentence sometimes. So we talk about pictures of things, and we get the children either to cut out pictures from magazines, draw pictures, pretend to take pictures. If you're a rich school, you've got digital cameras, you can take pictures. So things that have a name that you can take a picture of, probably a noun. And we might go on walks around the school or the school grounds and find things that are nouns that we could take a picture of. And so we can make up a class book that you can then leave, and the children can go through it and look at them separately. You could do word and picture matching if you're doing it as vocabulary for children whose English isn't their first language. They can make lists. Lots of vocabulary opportunities. Now, I can see a swing. I can see a slide. Can you see the slide? Yes, I can see the slides. Again, particularly if it's English as a foreign or additional language, always use that opportunity for vocabulary, for sentences, for speaking, for getting as many experiences in. You know, there is the teacher. Where is a teacher? Here is a teacher. In the garden is a flower. Is there a flower in the garden? Yes, there's a flower in the garden. You know, it's all those things that you normally do, but you can bring it in and use what you're teaching to enhance both. Okay, and we say nouns are normally people, places, or things. And again, you can get them to sort either pictures or words into the three categories: people, places, or things, because they're generally what nouns are. Then we can do, you know, again, comprehension all the time, checking they understand, checking they know, very simply asking them. Then they can do them on paper. Is the cat sleeping? Yes or no? Yes. But again, a simple picture like this, you can get so much vocabulary and learning from. Okay, this is a cat. So you can get them not just to say cat or yes, you know, this is a cat. Yes, the cat is sleeping. Is it a black cat? No, it's not a black cat. It is in fact a ginger cat, because all orange cats in the UK are ginger. I don't really know why, but that is just what we call them. It's a tabby. And so again, it's a simple picture. Lots of vocabulary can be got out of it. I can see a dog. No, you can't. Okay, no, I can't see a dog. I can see a cat. One simple picture, but as I say, just get everything you can out of it. Yes and no sentences are great for comprehension. I have, these are two plastic cups, obviously, one labelled yes, one labelled no. I have a whole list of little words that you can either print out. If you go to Sue's website, which is tcrw.co.uk, she has some that you can print out that are already done. You just cut up and laminate. I cut them into strips. I give the children some and they just read them and put them into the yes pot or the no pot. Okay, and then I can go back and I can check whether they've understood them, because if they're in the right pots, then I know they know, you know, they've understood the words. I don't have to sit with them necessarily. And again, once I've made the sets up, I can use them as many times as I want to. Okay, trees can run, yes or no. Very, very useful, because you know, it's no good being able to get the word off the page if you don't understand them. You need both those elements to be an independent and competent reader. Okay, nouns, you can have more than one noun. You have plurals. Okay, the simplest way, the most common way in English of making a plural is by adding an S. So again, we talk about that. We've got, this is a picture from the big book. Okay, lots of things on the page: duck, ducks, cars, cars, tree, trees. Okay, so they get the idea of adding the S so that they know it means more than one. If a word ends with a ch, a sh, a s, or a x, which actually is a s as well, because you've got that sound there, then you add es to the word to make the plural. But again, we go over these things and introduce it a little bit at a time, and so the children learn quite happily. I'll pull out plurals. There's the template for this in the back of the handbook. So again, just a fun way of reinforcing it. One ladybird, pull it out. 3 ladybirds, you've got this on the end, okay? And again, you can restrict the vocabulary by giving them cards with pictures on. So they have to choose one of those, so they don't start choosing things like cherries where they don't know the plural of it yet. So again, little things that you can just do to make it more fun. And our compound word birds, so the last spelling in the sentences, there's always a longer one. It's normally a compound word. Compound words are where you've got 2 smaller words that have been put together to make another word. Sometimes it is self-evident, like blackbird. Okay, a blackbird, it's a bird that's black, that's fine, that's no problem. Sometimes it's not. A ladybird has nothing to do with ladies or birds other than wings, really. So again, you can make up sets of these. There's so the templates in the back of one of the handbooks. I make up sets of them and the children put them together and decide if it's a word. Again, if it's English as a foreign language, then I often have the pictures with the words underneath sometimes, depending on what level of vocabulary I'm working at. So again, it's a way of reinforcing both the compound words and the vocabulary, because I have to choose the right picture to go with it. So these are in the back of the book. You make them up. And again, you've got them, you can use them. And again, lots of writing, creative writing, non-fiction writing, adjectives for, you know, if you're doing ladybirds, if it's part of your project or topic, you're doing mini beasts in science or whatever it may be. Okay, every opportunity to both talk and write and use the knowledge that you are teaching them. It's not just a worksheet that they do once a week. We have collective nouns, so the nouns for groups of things. Okay, so if we have a little read, is it a herd of birds? Is it a bunch of flowers? Is it a library of trees? It's not a herd of birds, it's a flock of birds. Okay, bunch of flowers is right, but it would be a forest or possibly a wood of trees. So again, we learn some very simple ones, the basic ones. And again, if it's English as a foreign language, you're better to stick with those. But again, if you've got older children or children whose English is quite fluent, again, you can take it for creative writing. So what could the collective nouns for these be? Okay. You can have a little think. What could you have? What would you call a collection of octopuses? Of teddy bears? Of dancers? Of monsters? I have in the past had things like a wriggle of octopus, a cuddle of teddies, a stamp of dancers, or a swirl of dancers, okay, a scare of monsters, a float of balloons. Again, and they can draw pictures, they can write them underneath. And again, it's just a nice little imaginative task that the children can do. This is my lovely friend Hema, who has got her collective noun cauldron. Slides in and slides out. The children can write their recipes for the witch's brew. So a bunch of skeleton keys, a mischief of rats, a cluster of spiders, a rattle of bones. Okay, it's using language creatively. So that's you know, a lovely idea to do. And concrete and abstract nouns. As I said, if you can take a picture of it, it is probably a noun. However, that's not the end of the story. It never is it? So again, if you can take a picture of it, it's a concrete noun, but there are other things that are nouns that have names, but you can't necessarily take a picture of. So things like the tide. The tide comes in and out every day. You can put the and a in front of it. It's definitely a noun. I can take a picture of the sea, but I can't take a picture of the tide as such. Okay, so they're more thoughts and ideas. So we have a slightly different action coming from the head. So again, you can have a quick think and decide which of those are concrete and which of those are abstract nouns, which are things that you could take a picture of, and which are things are more of a concept that would be difficult to illustrate in that way. Okay, so carrots, flutes, no problem, take pictures of those. Kind of say take a picture of Africa, but there is a physical country and you can draw the, you know, the map shape of it. Things like intelligence, thoughts, love, okay, they're names of things, but it's very difficult. So they're abstract nouns. So we talk about those, but not until much further up in the grammar handbooks. I am watching the time, by the way. We then move on to countable and uncountable nouns. So some things, as I say, you can say a table, the table. But some things like sugar, okay, sugar you get a pile of, or a bag of, or a pound of. You can't count the individual grains of sugar. So they are uncountable nouns. So you have to describe them as some, or how many. And a lot of those things, great for writing recipes or doing recipes. So we look at those. And again, writing recipes, following recipes, nice activity to do, not just on a piece of paper. And again, you can use lots of imaginary things. These are from Terry Pratchett, dried frog pills. How would you create dried frog pills? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all those fabulous sweets that Willy Wonka has. What sweet would you invent? What would it do? This is from the top of one of the pupil books. As I say, a whole load of sweets. You can give them to them to suggest what are the names for them, what do they do. George's Marvellous Medicine, Roald Dahl, fantastic book. He makes up all these medicines for his grandma. What does he put in them? Again, this is another header from one of the spelling sheets. What marvellous medicine would you make? What's the recipe for it? So again, using what you're teaching them, but putting them into a creative way of using them and writing. Now, I'm actually going to break here for 15 minutes because we've been going for an hour and a half. If we have a comfort break for about 15 minutes, and then we will come back and continue with our talk. Right, I'm going to try and stop the screen sharing. And
all right, so we're going for a 15 minutes break.
Yeah, lovely.
See you soon after 15 minutes, please.
So are we back and ready to continue? Fabulous. Okay, shall I carry on? Excellent, right. So as I say, lots of opportunities for creative work as well as borrowing old grammar. That's not borrowing at all, I don't mean that. So we talked about nouns. We now move on to another part of speech, adjectives, which has the colour blue. Adjectives describe nouns, and the action again is on the head, but we say it's adding to the noun, it's telling you more about the noun. We use snakes because obviously we have Inky, Snake and Bee as our characters within our programme and our reading books. We use snakes because there can be lots of lovely colours, which are all adjectives. You can get lots of patterns on your snakes, spotty, stripy, furry, old, wrinkly, all sorts of words which are adjectives. So we talk about the snakes. There are templates in the back of the book that you can make snakes up in the little sections, and the children can make a big long snake which can go around the wall, or they can make a little one that they can take home. And again, we talk about, you know, lots of things to do with the snake. And again, you can widen that out. It doesn't have to be snakes. Okay. If you're learning about other things, these are fish in all lots of different colours, and good old Elmer the elephant. And of course, he's a different pattern to the other elephants, and there's lots of learning that you can get out of that. They can design their own Elmer elephant pattern and use adjectives to describe those. If you're doing a project on castles, adjectives for castles, you know, dark, stone, grey, mysterious, whatever it might be. So you're teaching adjectives, we give you something to do, but broaden it out and apply it to the other things that you might be teaching on the topics that you're doing. As long as you're covering the idea of adjectives describing nouns, that is the important thing. Okay, there's a young man here who's described himself. He's thought of adjectives, smart, kind, tall, intelligent, brave, and just to show he's not completely conceited, naughty, and thin. Okay, so again, they can think of adjectives to describe themselves or a character from a storybook. So the one on the right is a gingerbread man who is delicious, awesome, tasty, yummy. So again, you can apply that in lots of ways. And again, it should be coming out in the work that they are doing for you. So again, we can start off very simply, having talked about adjectives, give them sentences and they need to put adjectives in. So again, you can have a quick go at thinking of some adjectives to go with these. They kept through the what forest. She sleeps in the what bed. The what dog is jumping. We hope to get a something rabbit. I worked in the shed. Okay. I've underlined it in blue because blue is a colour for adjectives. So again, they can have some sentences. You can do it on the computer. Again, because we're all doing Zoom and distance learning, actually doing things on the computer, you can see their screen and they type in the colour. It's just a little bit different, something to keep them interested. So they kept through the dark and mysterious forest. She sleeps in the comfy bed. The little dog is jumping. We hope to get a pet rabbit. I worked in the garden shed. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, but lots of vocabulary coming through and things as well. But just thinking here, one part of speech. The nouns, we've underlined in black because that's the colour for nouns. We're building up their knowledge as we go. Okay, we've got the monster. It's from one of our reading books. A scary, huge, green, hairy monster. So We've got several adjectives together there. And again, you know, give them a picture, get them to think of some adjectives for it. Then you start asking questions to develop it into a story. Why is it scary? Hey, where does it live? What does it do? Who does it scare? Does it have friends? Does it have enemies? You know, you're developing and again talking, and then they can go and write something, and you can see their understanding. And then in grammar 2, we have a sheet where we have our alien, and they have to draw a head, a body, and a feet, and describe them. And again, you can use that to build a story up in the same way. What planet does it live on? What does it like doing? Where does it go? What are its friends like? Again, you know, you're starting with something that they've done, that they're doing, and then you're taking it on and using it to do other things with it. So again, little bit at a time, little steps, keep on repeating, keep on using what they're doing. This is my little cat, okay? It says at the top, the little tortoiseshell pretty cat. That's fine. They are all adjectives that describe the cat. But for any native speaker, they will feel very uncomfortable with that description. The little tortoiseshell pretty cat. Now, the majority of people you ask will look at you and they'll tell you they don't like it, but they can't necessarily tell you why. They'll just go, it's not right, okay? A lot of grammar, particularly for native speakers, it's implicit. You know it because you use it. But when you try and explain it, you either don't know or you can't explain it very well. You know, teaching grammar, we then have this vocabulary we can use with the children to explain things, and so they know. There is actually in English a sort of, they call it an order of adjectives. So there is an order that they're supposed to go. We will be much happier with this. The pretty little tortoiseshell cat. Oh, that flows, that's lovely. That doesn't, it's like fingers down a blackboard, okay? Most people won't be able to tell you why, but it's to do with the order of the adjectives. And further up the grammar, we go over what that order is. Like most things in English, it is not set in stone. There are sometimes ways it varies, mostly to do with meaning, you know, making sure you mean the right things or things fitting together. So normally you get what you call a determiner first. So, those some. Then they call these opinions ugly. Okay, there's no definition. It's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Then things to do with size and shape, condition and age, colour and pattern, origin, and then the material. So it generally comes in that sort of order. So we look at the different types of adjectives there are and what order that they come in. You then quite often find you have to explain to them that you don't really need 7 adjectives every time, that actually a few are better, and you know, cut it down. So we have a scary, huge, wet, spotty Martian, an enormous, new, shiny spaceship, a lovely Indian meal. Okay, you have the number of adjectives that is suitable, but you use them to describe where you are. And as you can see, Indian meal, Indian is a proper adjective. That's why it's got its capital letter there. Okay, it's not at the beginning of a sentence, but it's a proper adjective, so it needs it there. So again, we talk all these different things through with them, and just enjoy using and playing with the language and with words. Okay, verbs, another part of speech. Verbs are doing words, so we pretend to run. The colour for verbs is red, and we normally have things to do with bees, because we think of, in England, we think of bees as being busy. Bees are always busy doing things. Okay, so in this picture, the bees are busy playing football, kicking a ball, waving a scarf, flying, painting, all sorts of things that they're doing. In the beehive, we've got the hexagons, the beehives, and we've got to brush, to read, which is the infinitive. When you put to in front of it, that makes the infinitive of the verb. And again, like if you want to check it's a noun, if you put an a, an an, or a the in front of it, if you want to check it's a verb, if you put to in front of it, then you can be pretty sure that, you know, that's what it is. So we talk about the B's, from that doing things, about verbs, the fact they're read, and the infinitive. So we've got lots of things we're adding in. And we also explain that actually every sentence must have a verb. There is a verb in every sentence. There's no point telling them that before now because they don't know what a verb is. Okay, so we've expanded our definition of a sentence. It's got a capital letter, it's got a full stop, it makes sense, it has a verb. Okay. So, can you identify the verbs in these sentences? And then you need to add a verb to the bottom one. Just have a, and again, you can underline it in a pencil, in a pen. If they're doing it, as I say, remotely, online, you can get them to colour, you know, use a different colour font, use a highlighter, lots of different ways of doing it, because we all have to adapt to how we found ourselves in these circumstances. Okay, so let's have a look. B skips. Skips is a verb there. B swims in the pool. B paints a beautiful picture. B shouts loudly. Ladybird kicks a ball. And I would imagine the majority of people had put the robin sings. Okay, it could be sitting on a nest. But so again, little activities you can do either to identify the verbs in sentences you give them, or give them a sentence and they have to put in a verb that they can think of. And again, if you're learning vocabulary, you can give them a set of words and a set of sentences, and they have to match the two of them up. So, as I say, constantly revising, using, expanding. So you can make a little poem or a little story. As you can tell, we've done a project on ladybirds. So lots of verbs. The ladybird runs along a twig, stops at the end, jumps into the air, flaps her wings, and flies across the garden. You could give the set of verbs that you want them to use. You could let them choose their own set of verbs, pick 5 verbs, write 5 little sentences or phrases. You've got a little poem. You can make a wall display. You can make a class book of them. So, you know, whatever it is you're learning about, you can adapt it to be useful then. We play Inky Says. We have a traditional game called Simon Says. So if Simon says, you have to do it. If you just give the command or the verb, then they're not supposed to do it and they're out. They play it at parties and things. So you might say, Inky says stand. So everybody has to stand up, okay? Inky says run on the spot. So everybody runs on the spot. Sing. But Inky didn't say that. So they don't sing. So again, it's just a game. And again, you can practice the verbs, the vocabulary that you've been working on and play the little game. Again, it's physical, gives them a little break if they're doing lots of writing. And again, you can check on their vocabulary, because if Inky says and they hop, then you know they know what hop means. So again, little game, little activity, multi-sensory. A reason we do the actions, number of things. Okay, so far we've done proper nouns, we've done common nouns, and we've done verbs, and we've actually done adjectives, although they're not here. So another thing I will do, I will call out, and I will call out a name. So I might call out Sarah. So they do the action for me for proper nouns. And when I've got a group of children in front of me and I can see who is very slow, who's watching the person next door to them, okay, who's there immediately. So I know who knows and I know who needs a little bit of work. It's a really good thing with the actions. Okay, so Sarah, and they've done me the proper noun. So then I can say to them, right, if it's a proper noun, what am I going to have to remember? I'm going to have to remember the capital letter. So, you know, in their writing, it helps them to think like that. Okay, so what about sing? That's a verb because they can sing. What about hug? Okay, now, you might get, common noun, a hug, I give you a hug. You might get to hug, I hug somebody. And there might be a few clever whatsits in there who are doing both, because it can mean both things. From the word on its own, you have no idea whether it's a noun or a verb. Okay, you need the context of a sentence to do that. And it very simply introduces to children that actually some words are always one part of speech, but some words can change according to their use within the sentence. So again, we look at this and we look at nouns acting as adjectives, which happens quite a lot. We've got two sets here, so cottage, pumpkin, chicken and apple. And then the second set is foot, eye, moth, cannon. Okay, now, if I showed you all those words, you would tell me that they are nouns, which they are. However, there is a word that you can put after those, one word that you can put after those first cottage, pumpkin, chicken, apple, and another word that you could put after foot, eye, moth and cannon, which will mean that they become adjectives. So I don't know if you just have a quick think. So we talk about how we use words in a sentence, what it means, how they change. So cottage, pumpkin, chicken, apple, they can all be pies. Cottage pie, which is mince with mashed potato on top. Pumpkin pie, very American. Chicken pie, apple pie, my husband's favourite. Okay, foot, eye, moth, cannon. If there weren't so many people, I'd ask for some ideas, but I'd be deluged if that was the case. Right, football, eyeball, mothball, we put in the cupboard to get rid of moth, cannonball, okay? So again, they are nouns, but they are acting as adjectives in these particular cases. So we need constantly to be looking at the sentence and how we're using it and what we're doing. Do you remember our order of adjectives? So we had our scary, huge, wet, spotty Martian, the word Martian there, and then an enormous, new, shiny Martian spaceship. It's now acting as an adjective rather than as the noun that is being described. So again, looking at where it comes in the sentence and how it is being used is very important. Another thing about verbs is that they happen in time. They either happen in the past, in the present, or in the future, okay? Again, this is very simplified, simple verbs. So we start looking at how it changes. So they learn Spanish on Friday afternoon. Where is the verb in that? So they highlight it in red, they learn, which is in the present tense because they're doing it now. The race will start in the park. Where is the verb in that? Will start. That's the future. It will start. We have that auxiliary verb, that extra verb, the will, I will, you will, sometimes shall. That's falling out of use, really. We mostly say will. So you need those two parts of it. Again, it's all introduced a little bit at a time for the children as we go. She brushed her hair. Brushed, we know that's the past because it's got that suffix, that ending ed on it. Again, the overlap with the spelling, and they're looking for that. So they start identifying which tense the verb is in. Again, you can have pots with past, present and future, like the yes, no cups. and they can put the sentences into the correct cup. My friend Tina in Australia has hats, an astronaut hat, a cap, and a top hat, an old-fashioned top hat, and they have to take it to the child, the sentence to the child, according to which verb it is in. Again, you know, different ways of doing something to really get that understanding in and give them lots and lots of practice of doing it, not just necessarily, you know, writing things down. And we call them we have our tent. You have to think when you say that. Have your teeth in, your tent, which again just gives them a visual to hang the information you're giving them on. So we start with the simple tenses, and again, native speakers will speak in all the tenses that we have right from the beginning. Other children and the teachers will as well, but we're just taking some of this learning out a little bit at a time so that they understand it. And eventually we work up to having the simple past, present and future, the continuous past, present and future. If it's a continuous tense, you are still doing it. So I am jumping. Okay, I will be jumping. You are in the process of doing it. It hasn't been completed, unlike the perfect tense where it has been. So, and again, they can fill in all the different parts of that by the time they finished. Again, I have that tent on a laminated board, and they have to fill in the different parts of different tenses. So again, it's just using vocabulary, learning vocabulary, getting used to it. And as I say, that tent shape just gives a nice visual thing that they can hang the idea of the 9 tenses that we eventually cover on. It doesn't mean they can't use it if we haven't covered it. It just means that we haven't taken that knowledge and made it explicit yet. It's something they understand, but they don't necessarily know the word for and things. So we go through the different tenses. We do get pulled up sometimes. Well, not pulled up, but we are very careful. Past and present are tense, and I'm told future isn't because it hasn't happened yet. But again, you know, we're teaching small children, and past, present and future works very, very well and explains exactly what we means. We can also parse verbs. So again, looking at the different bits of the verb, what are they doing? What are they telling us? Again, this is further up. This is in the grammar 4. So the verb phrase here, we are talking. So we look at it and we will ask the children, is it singular or plural? Is it the first, second or third person? Okay. And because we taught them this, because we've built up their knowledge, they will know it's plural because it's we. So we is more than one. The first, second or third person. Okay, it's first because we include yourself. Okay, second person is somebody else. And third person is if you're talking about not a particular person, just a lot of other people. Is it in the past, present or future? It's in the present because we are talking now. And is it the simple or continuous? Further up you would have the perfect as well. It's continuous because we're talking. Okay, so they get lots of practice at that. And they become really, really good at it. We also look at phrasal verbs, which again are very important to look at, particularly for a foreign or additional language, which is a verb in this sentence. Right, in fact, took off is a verb in this sentence, it's a phrasal verb. Because if the boy took his muddy boots, okay, that means something completely different from the boy took off his muddy boots. Okay, if the boy took his boots, he would take them somewhere else. If he takes them off, he takes them off his feet. Okay, it's a very particular meaning. So phrasal verbs is a verb and one or more other word, usually a preposition or an adverb, which together make a different verb with a whole new meaning. Okay, we have lots of them in English. But again, we look at them, we talk about them, we discussed their meaning. So they broke into the barn. They didn't break the barn. They broke into the barn. So they forced their way in. We should keep away from the, I can't see what it says there, from the edge. We should keep away from the edge. Okay, not just keep, but keep away. So they're phrasal verbs. So again, we look at those, we learn some of them, we learn some of the most common ones. So ways of making sure they're understanding is great, because again, if you just look them up in an Indian English dictionary or whatever it is, a Spanish English dictionary, you wouldn't necessarily get the meaning unless you knew it was acting as a phrasal verb. Okay, so we talked about syllables in terms of spelling earlier on. So we start working at syllables. We've looked at compound words, but in grammar 3, we start looking at syllables. Okay, and again, we just first of all refer it back to what they already know in terms of the compound words. So weekend, week, end, they're the 2 words that come together. And then we start taking it forward. Syllables are just the bits that you can break a word up into. Okay. We use them quite a lot in English, not just for spelling, but also for reading. Because if you get a big long word, okay, how do you go about reading it? You're not going to sit there and go, because by the time you got halfway through, you haven't got a clue. You need a different approach for big long words than you do for small words. So on the whole, what good readers, what we tend to do is, if we don't know the word, we break it down into its little parts. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. It's supposed to be one of the longest words in the English dictionary, which is why we use it. It's not a word we come across often. So again, people have to think about it, they have to stop and they have to think, how do I read this word? How am I going to do this? The same if you'd ask them to spell it, they will break it down into those little pieces and then spell those little pieces as they go. But as I said, with the spelling, being able to do that is a skill, and we teach it. So we start and we talk about chopping it, which is why we've got the logs and the chopper. We chop them into little pieces. So we chop them around the sounded verbs, around about the vowel sound. Okay, so we've got some quite straightforward ones. We've got some more difficult ones. The kids get really good at it. Again, your turn. Have a quick go at these 3. Can you chop these into their syllables? Right, unkindness is easy. Unkindness, we've got a prefix, a root word and a suffix. Teach children all about these. Hunted, that's fine. We talk about chin bumps, so hunted, okay, you've got 2 chin bumps, you've got 2 syllables. Unkindness, you've got 3 chin bumps, you've got 3 syllables. Jumped is the one everyone gets wrong and is in there for that reason. Okay, you have got 2 vowel letters, you've got the and you've got the e. But if you listen, jumped, it's not jumped. And if you do your chin bumps, jumped. You've only got 1 chin bump, because that E in the ED is not sounded in this word, okay? It is in some words, but in this particular word, it's not. So all the time we are listening for the vowel sound, and that is how the word is chopped up into syllables. And again, we explain that to the children. We do lots of chopping up of words into the syllables, and then they learn to use that and apply that to when they do spellings. We can also use this creatively. Of course we can. Because certain kinds of poems are connected to syllables, particularly Japanese. Haiku. Haiku are poems where you have 3 lines. They have 17 syllables, 5 in the first line, 7 in the second line, 5 in the next line. So they have to think about their syllables. We've got a spider drops down. Whoop, there he comes. Dangles by a silken thread, hovers, and is gone. Okay, so that's a little haiku. We also, or they also have things called tanka, which are 5 lines with 31 syllables. So again, when you're thinking about syllables in the word, you have to think very carefully about the words you're going to choose, the words you're going to use, which ones have got the most meaning, you know, which ones do you really need. So very good. Something called syncanes. Apparently these are much better for English. They fit much more into our way of speaking. They're 5 lines, 22 syllables, which are arranged as 2, 4, 6, 8, and then 2 again. And the last 2, it's normally a sort of a roundup of the little poem. So we've got a web, beautiful and delicate silk, woven by a master spinner, a trap, okay? So lots of opportunities there for vocabulary, for getting them to think creatively, for thinking about the words they use, for practicing their syllables and things. And of course, we've got things like Twitter and tweets these days. It used to be 140 characters, but apparently everybody found that too little. It's not syllables, it is characters, so it's literally the letters and the spaces. But again, it's contracting what you want to say. You now got 128 characters to play with, but condensing some information into a small piece of information with exactly what you want to say. So again, you can get them writing tweets with a number of characters. They can't go over it, and they must convey a certain piece of information. You know, very good about getting them to think about which words are really necessary. So again, you can use what you're teaching creatively, as well as just finding, you know, what to do. Right, we teach pronouns. The colour for pronouns is pink. Pronouns are small words that take the place of nouns. So instead of saying B was playing, B pointed to snake, B had a drink, B sat on the chair, okay, and repeating the name over and over again, you put the pronoun in. And again, we have the action, we have I, you, he, we point to a boy, she, we point to a girl, it, we point to the floor. We takes in ourselves, because we are part of the we. You, the other people in the room, and they, we normally point to the next door classroom or somebody. So there are pronouns, and immediately they look at them and they say, but there's 2 yous. Oh, we've got 2 yous, you don't need 2 yous. So then you explain that the first you is singular, so you're just pointing to one person. The second you is plural, which is why you're pointing to a whole group of the other people sitting near you. Okay, so again, by putting it down like this, you're given the opportunity to talk about it. You can also conjugate verbs once you know the pronouns like this. We tend to only do it when learning a foreign language, but it's actually quite good to do whatever. So I look, you look, he, she, it looks, we look, you look, they look. And then again, immediately, someone will point out, he, she, it. That's got an S on the end, it's different. Yeah, when you're using the third person, he, she, it needs an S on the end. So again, something that could be quite complicated, you've made easy, you've given them a rule, they know what it is, don't need to worry about it anymore. Pronouns are sometimes called determiners, it's just a different name for them. And they can also be possessive pronouns. My book, they show belonging. Your book, his, her, its book. Our book, your book, their book, okay? So if it's a possessive pronoun showing who it belongs to, it is actually also a possessive adjective. Same name, same word, just described in a slightly different way. It's not just a book, it's my book. It's describing who it belongs to. Okay, so, but all these things are very easy if you explain it and build it up a little bit at a time. We also learn that sentences must have a subject and an object, okay? So, as I say, we've started off with a simple definition of a sentence. It has a capital letter, it makes sense, it has a full stop. And we've learned just now it has to have a verb. So we find the verb, which we underline, or we've changed to red here. So the cat chased the mouse, okay? Chased is the verb. Now, every sentence must have a subject, and the subject does the verb. So in this case, the cat is the one doing the chasing. So we put a square box around it and sometimes a little S in the corner to show that's a subject. And most sentences, but not all, have an object. Okay, they don't have to have an object, but the object is whom the verb is being done to. So in this case, it's the mouse that is being chased. So the mouse in this case is the object. Okay, so again, they learn to do that. They learn to put the little box and the oval around it. And again, we're building towards a better understanding of sentences, of looking at sentences, of understanding, of being able to analyse sentences. Very famous saying here, my husband and I, the Queen, my husband and I. Do we use my husband and I, or do we use my husband and me? Again, if you know, there is a very simple rule, okay? Depending on if it's a subject or the object. If that phrase is the subject, it's my husband and I. If that phrase is the object of the sentence, it's my husband and me. And I use this little poem to explain the difference. I hugged Granny, Granny hugged me. Okay, you hugged Granny, Granny hugged you. He hugged Granny, Granny hugged him. She hugged Granny. Okay, so you can immediately see the difference when you use the different pronouns. Again, makes it quite easy, and again, quite a nice little visual thing to help them remember how you do that. Okay, just as adjectives describe nouns, so adverbs describe verbs. How do you do verbs? Do you eat tidily? Do you eat messily? Is the band playing tunefully? Is the aeroplane flying noisily? Okay, so often, not 100%, but often adverbs end in ly. Okay, but again, lots of vocabulary, lots of talking, lots of things going on in this picture. The colour is orange. It looks quite red there, but in fact the colour is orange. And because the verb action is running, and then adverbs, you put one fist on top of the other. So that's the action for adverbs. And again, we can play games to show understanding, just to practice. Again, you can have cards if you want to restrict the vocabulary to things that they know. So we play the adverb game. So we've got verbs on the right-hand side. So you have a child come out to the front. You can either whisper an adverb, they can think of an adverb, or you give them a card. The rest of the class are not allowed to know what that says. So it might say loudly. They then have to call out a verb. So they might call out shout. So then they have to do that verb in the manner of the adverb. So they shout, but obviously they're not allowed to use the word that they've written. Or they eat. Okay. So you can use lots of words carefully. So they're brushing their hair, and they have to do it very carefully. Again, you can check vocabulary, you can check understanding, and the children enjoy playing the game. And you can, again, have cards and leave them out, and they can play amongst themselves just to practice things quickly. Okay, because what we're doing all the time is trying to expand their understanding, their knowledge, their comprehension, their use of language. So we do something called expand a sentence in Grammar 2. So we start off with a very simple, somewhat boring sentence, shall we say? The dog barked, okay? Yeah, okay, it's got a capital letter, it's got a full stop, it makes sense, it has a verb, but it's a bit boring, isn't it? So I say to you, well, what could we do to make it more interesting? Okay, we could put an adjective in to describe the dog. So what sort of dog is it? You can have a go at this at home if you would so like. Okay, so what sort of dog is it? A big dog, a fierce dog, a hairy dog, a small dog? We'll put another one in. Just why not? The small, hairy, the fierce, large, the wet, soggy, okay? Whatever. And how did it bark? Did it bark loudly, fiercely? Did it yap? I don't know, you know. So we add bits into the sentence until instead of a boring little sentence like the dog barked, okay, I tell the children it's the detail that makes things interesting. So from that little 3-word sentence, we can end up with the curious fluffy dog barked excitedly, okay? And then you say to them, well, why was it barking excitedly? The small gnome-like couple who had suddenly appeared in the garden, okay? And you've got a whole sentence there that's really interesting. And of course, you can use it as a story starter then. Having made this sentence up in the grammar lesson, the children can then expand that and write some more sentences and turn it into a story. Okay? If you've got 2 or 3 that are really good, you can use other children's, you know, at another time, keep them as story starters, have a stack of them. And the children are always, you know, really proud and excited if their story starter gets chosen. You don't even have to do it as a written story. Again, you know, if you've got a few minutes, something's happened and you need to fill in time, take a story starter, they have to read it, and then they just write, they just say orally some more sentences connected with that particular sentence that we've got. So again, lots of opportunity for trying to get them to think about and expand what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're writing. Now, when we're talking about spelling and reading, in fact, there are assessments, there are tests that you can give your children, and it says your child has got a reading age of 7.2. Your child has got a spelling age of 11.6 or whatever it might be. So you can then say, you know, these have been standardized. My children are working a year above their chronological age. My children are reading a year above my chronological age. You know, again, if they've got problems, you can say, oh, you know, they're a year behind, we need to catch them up, but they can be measured. Sadly, there is no such thing for grammar or for writing. There isn't a test that we can give to say, aren't my children doing fantastically because they're 3 years ahead? Because, as I say, there isn't anything. The best way to gauge it is things like this, is the sorts of words they're using, the sort of sentence structure that they are using, okay? Is it, oh, these are story starters, sorry, I've gone on a bit here. These are out of the book, you can use these as story starters as well. And the tops of the spelling sheets, again, there's lots of things in there that you can pick out and use to help with the detail and the things that they're doing. This is from one of them, I call it Brilliant Books Yet to Be Written. If you look across the top there, it's how to stencil 50 patterns, gerbils, there's all sorts of things going on there. So again, you can use your spellings to produce titles and then think what that books might be about. The Tendrils of Fear, Death in April, One Tranquil Summer, The Fossil Hunters, okay? Because what you want to do is get children who can produce lovely pieces of writing, and that is how you can assess them. So this is a piece of writing that a child did after we'd been to an outing to a local nature reserve, a local marsh, okay? And when you read it, you can hear all the things that we've been learning, okay? In the warmth of a meadow, the grass was bursting with life. Near the marsh, insects of all kinds created this enchanting scene. Warblers were diving for their dinner, catching unsuspecting insects hiding in the magnificent open pink flowers. Wasps waiting for their next victims, butterflies of all kinds, crickets resting on leaves, watching the world around them, ladybirds dodging through the spines of thorns, the reeds waving in the wind in this full of life miniature world. Okay, this is not just we went to the marsh and we saw a ladybird. Okay, it's not necessarily a scientific piece of writing, I have to admit, but it's very evocative. It gives a really lovely sense of the day, the things they saw. They're thinking about what the different insects were doing, and you know, they've got lovely lovely use of words, waiting for their next victims. Okay, this is what we're aiming for. This is what we are trying to produce by looking at and learning about and teaching grammar. One of the ways we look at using words and things is we have what we call better words that sort of leads on to thesaurus type work. Some words are very overused. Said, you know, when you get a sentence, a story as a teacher, Peter said this, his mum said that, James said this. Okay, so we start off, we have our word webs, and we start saying, well, what other words could we use instead of said? Sometimes it's a direct replacement, sometimes the meaning, but you can use it instead of. So again, you can have a little think of the number of words you could think of. Kids fill in our word webs. We have lots of different words on them. So we've got murmured, yelled, muttered, explained, asked. Again, you can make up a word bank. You can get the web on your wall with all the words in and remind the children to use them when they're doing their writing. You know, don't just use said, look at some of these others, which ones could you use? So we don't just use said, we've got happy, you know, we have lots of them, okay, but we can make these word webs up, we can put them on the walls, we can have sets of cards which they can go and look at if they want a better word to use, a more descriptive word that they can use, because again, we can then explain to them, I am going out, said Inky. Perfectly good sentence. Just a bit boring though, isn't it? You know, like the dog barked. Yeah, okay. What could we use instead of said? I'm going out, whispered Inky. Okay, changes the meaning of it. I'm going out, hissed Inky. Although we think of snake hissing, but we also talk about people hissing as well. I'm going out, shouted Inky. Okay, so we're explaining how that just changing the word changes the meaning. I'm going out, enthused Inky. We're all let out of lockdown. Yay! Not for a while, unfortunately. Okay, but it gets them thinking about words and using them. And as I say, that's what we want them, you know, to do. This is more of the children's writing. Free as a bird. Finally, I'm free. No more years of being enclosed in a cramped room. I soar up into the azure sky, straight towards the scorching sun until I feel it burning on my back. I swiftly swoop down right until my fingers are slicing through the dark sea water. I go up once again and turn round and round in midair. I feel dizzy, so I flap my magnificent wings even harder and I speed forward, and the wind on my face is such a majestic feeling. I start to wonder if I really am a bird. Okay, you know, fantastic, lovely use of words. This is another one, a poem about theatre. Again, done a whole topic on the theatre. In fact, they'd had a visit to the Globe Theatre in London. But lovely, you know, really you can see them thinking about the types of words that they're using. There's more to a theatre than stone or bricks. It's also built of love and hope. It's built of laughs and of tears, and loud booming claps and cheers. Mouldy sweets lay on the floor. Exit signs mark the door. A velvet curtain rises, and the tale unfolds. Eyes pop, jaws drop as you take part in a fairy tale. I mean, I think that's just fantastic. I'd be pleased if I wrote that, you know, let alone a child of 9. But again, as I say, we're working on words, we're working on structure, we're working on just enjoying and thinking about all these things. We have a lot of homophones in English. Homo meaning the same, phones sound, words that sound the same but have a different meaning. There's quite a lot of jokes and puns and other such things that rely on this. So things like right, as in it is right, not wrong, and I write on a piece of paper. Flour that we make bread with, and a flower that grows that we smell. So we do lots of work on homophones and on the meaning of them, looking up the meaning in the dictionary. Again, another way of using what we've been learning. It's not just for something in year 1, it's ongoing. Which spelling do I need? Which meaning is that? And again, you can see where there are a lot of homophones that actually are quite common. They're very, very common, and again overlaps with grammar. So if we look at the homophone for there, the word there, we actually have 3 different types. We have there, ERE, which is a position word, a preposition. So here, there, where. We have there spelled EIR, which is a possessive adjective. It's who it belongs to. It's their cat, it's their book, it's their classroom. And there, they are, is part of the verb to be. So again, if you can substitute they are into the sentence, they're at the seaside, they are at the seaside, that is the spelling that you need. So by knowing their grammar, they can apply that so they know they get the right spelling of the word that they want. When you're speaking, it doesn't matter because you just hear the sound. But when you're writing it down, it can be very important, not only to make sure you get the right word, because you wouldn't want to make bread with a flower like a flower with petals, like a sunflower. Okay, you want the right sort of flower for that. But again, if you know your grammar here, you know which spelling of the word there, you know, also with things like our and are, we tend to pronounce them both as are here. But again, if you know your grammar, you know which part of speech it is, you get the right spelling. And none of the children will make mistakes like this one. So fun that they won't even know they're learning. I wouldn't be sending my child there. Okay, there, they are learning. It should be the one with the apostrophe. So again, teaching grammar is making sure that we write exactly what we mean and it's correct. Okay, we also teach prepositions, which are position words. They show the relative position, normally of one noun to another, not necessarily. Prepositions are green, so we point at the floor and then we point in front to show that it's from one thing to another. And we've got Inky, our little mouse here, who goes on a journey along this road. We've got all the prepositions down the left-hand side. So she might go along the road, under the trees, across the bridge, through the gate, okay? So again, they can make a little story or a poem up, through the gate, under the bridge, across the road, along the path, between the trees, by the cows, towards the farm. But again, we can broaden this out. We have lots of lovely books. I'm sure everybody knows we're going on a bear hunt. Okay, we come to whatever it is. Oh no, we can't go under it, preposition. Oh no, we can't go over it, preposition. Oh no, we'll have to go through it, preposition. Okay, and then you've also got all the lovely words like, you know, with the grass, it's swishy, swashy, swishy, swashy. so you can have lots of fun reading it, making up your own words to describe what you're going through. You know, the mud, squelchy, squirchy, squelchy, squirchy. Rose's Walk, a very famous book, a fairly old book. As I say, this is an edition that celebrated 40 years of the book. It doesn't actually have words in it, but it's the adventures of Rosie, who's that little hen you can see on the front, and the fox is chasing her that you can just see on the left-hand side there. And it's got lovely pictures, and she walks through fairly oblivious, with the fox trying to catch her and failing. But again, you can get the children to talk about the pictures and what's going on in the picture and making up a story. But, you know, she goes through the farmyard and under here and over there. And so you get lots of prepositions within there. I also have things like, I have a little card. This is a picture taken from one of our readers. And I will say the monster rode. And then I can either say I just want 5 sentences, or again, if I'm angling my vocabulary to particular words, I will give them 5 prepositions, and I'll say, right, I want you to complete those sentences and tell me where he went along, where he went by, where he went near to get to the pond. Okay, and I have a whole selection of cards with children, animals, inky, you know, whatever picture takes my fancy. And again, I can either give them those 5, I can have a selection of 5, I can just deal them out randomly if I so desire, and get them to do things. So you can have a couple of minutes to just decide where he went along, by, near, across and under to get to the pond. Again, if their vocabulary knowledge is very limited, you can give them the nouns that you want them concentrating on, thinking about, in order to make up the little phrases or sentences. So I've got the monster rode along the road, by the shops, near the school, across the bridge, under the willow tree, to get to the pond. Okay, so you can have all of those things. There's no right or wrong answers to them. It's up to the children. It's quite interesting to see the answers you get and the things they're thinking about sometimes. As I say, I have a whole range of them, and we just play about and use them and do whatever. And then they can embroider it into a story by putting lots more detail in, or just use it as it is. So let's say prepositions. Now, punctuation marks. Okay, very important in terms of what do we mean. Punctuation, as we already seen, can completely change the meaning of what we're saying, and we are making sure we say exactly what we mean. Like poor old grandpa, who fortunately didn't get eaten earlier. Okay, very famous sentence: a woman without her man is nothing. Do we mean that? Do they mean that? I don't know. We can change the meaning of that with a comma. A woman without her man is nothing. Okay. Originally, when, like in Greek, ancient Greek times, writing was just written with no sentences, with no full stops. There was no punctuation. The person who was going to be doing the reading had to read it and interpret it, and when they spoke it aloud, when they read it aloud, had to put the pauses and everything else in. Then they started putting little pencil marks in to remind themselves where they were going to pause and stop and do things, and that is the beginning of punctuation. It's got more complicated as history has gone on, but again, it's a way of making sure that the words that you've put down are exactly what you mean. We do speech marks, okay? When we're talking, we know exactly what we're saying and who's saying what. If we have a comic and you've got your speech bubbles and it's got an arrow saying where you, who's doing the talking and what they're saying, which is fine. We start off very simply with these speech bubbles, and we start off with animals and animal sounds. This is another thing I learned. Not only are addresses different all around the world, it's amazing what different noises animals make in the different countries that you go to. I have no idea how some countries have come up with the noise that a dog or a donkey makes. I can't even hear anything descriptive of what it is, but there we are. So we have all the animals making their different sounds. We have people who say things. But then we've got to translate that into a piece of prose writing. So we have the 66 and the 99, and we do lots of work on that. I sometimes have a washing line, and we hang words on the washing line, and then they have to they peg in the speech marks and the commas and the full stops in the right place. And again, it's an opportunity to talk about it. Are you sure you've got that right? When you're sure they've got it right, then you can have a go at writing it down. We also have cards, and you know the Deanie boppers with the little springy things, and they'll have the sentence, the speech marks on, and again the children can line up, and then they have to put the children wearing the Deanie boppers in the speech marks in the right places. Again, it's a physical way of talking about it. Gives you a way of talking about it with children. Are you right? Do you think she's right? Where do you think she should be? And do it that way before they ever have to write anything down. Because as I say, eventually what we want to get to is pieces of prose with quite a lot of, you know, with proper speech marks and things in. These haven't copied particularly well. But we start off with very small, simple things. And eventually it comes out into the bigger prose that we get on the right-hand side. So sadly, it hasn't come out particularly well. So what we're doing all the time is extending their knowledge and thinking about what the word's doing in a sentence. And I talked about parsing earlier, and that's why we have the colours. And that each part of the speech comes in the different colour. Now, parsing like that is all very well for relatively simple sentences like this. Okay, dog is a noun, it's black. Little is describing the dog, so that's an adjective, so it's blue. Okay, happily is chased, is describing the verb chased. So that's fine. But as things become more complicated, as sentences become more complex, then we need a more complex way of doing it, because we don't just need to know that this is a verb or this is an adjective. So we have what we call our sentence walls, where they have to start analysing the sentence more. And again, if they do go on to university or to do grammar and other things at a much higher level, this then just feeds very naturally into sentence diagramming and things. I've simplified this a little bit because it's just easier when we're talking about it on the screen. So we have our word wall like this. We have our sentence. This is our very simple sentence. We've identified the different parts of speech with the colours. And then what we do is we say, right, the subject is the dog, because he's doing the chasing. So that goes in the subject box. Chased is the verb, goes in the verb box. And what he's chasing is a tennis ball, so that's the object. Okay, then we start looking at the other words in the sentence. So what words go with the word dog? The little dog is a noun phrase. It's not a sentence because it hasn't got a verb. It's a noun phrase. So those words sort of go together. A tennis ball, same thing. A tennis ball is a noun phrase. And the adverb happily goes with the verb chased. Okay, that's all fine. But when a sentence becomes more complex, okay, so we've now got the little dog happily chased a tennis ball into the sea. Okay, now you start thinking, well, this is when I start needing more than just a colour. Okay, so I've got this other little bit on this sentence now called into the sea. This is actually a prepositional phrase because it starts with a preposition. This is a long way up in the grammar, and the children are introduced to it very gradually. They get really good at it and they're very happy about it. Okay, so then we think about where does that prepositional phrase go? What is it describing? And it's describing where it was chased, where the ball was chased. Where was it chased? It was chased into the sea. So it belongs, because it's a prepositional phrase, but it's also a verbal phrase because it belongs to the verb. So it goes in that box there. So you can do really complex sentences this way when you are used to it, when you've done lots of them. It's really good. You get really, really into it. It sounds very, very complicated the first time you see it and you think, oh my goodness. But say the more you use it, the more you get used to it, the more you think, gosh, you know, it just makes it so, it's just so sensible. You know, and as I say, you get into sentence diagramming and Shakespeare and all these other things at a much higher level, but this is where it all starts. So you'll be pleased to know we are nearly coming to the end. Children talk with jolly grammar, right? They should be able to spell and punctuate more accurately. They should have a wider vocabulary than using other programs, I hope. They should be producing better and much more interesting pieces of writing, because obviously that is what we're aiming for, really. That's sort of the final thing, isn't it? We just don't want them to know words. And to have a clear understanding of how the language works, okay? Not just to repeat parrot fashion phrases or words or things that they've heard. A clear understanding of how language works and be able to make it work for them, okay? That is what we are aiming at. So that is the end of my PowerPoint for today, should we say. I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't know if we've got any time or any room for questions. But do you want me to have a go at some of the questions there? I mean, I have done a whistle-stop tour of 6 years of grammar and spelling, okay? If you use the program, when you read the books, a lot of the extra information and the detail is there. You know, things like, you know, tricky words, somewhere I could see tricky words and sight words. We don't really use sight words because we don't want children to learn words by sight. But as I say, some words, because they've got a tricky bit in them, it's tricky because they haven't been taught yet. So we do have to teach them sort of as a whole, but we point out the tricky bit and explain why it's tricky. Like as I say, the me, it's not meh, it's me. That is making an E sound, it's long sound. But we haven't quite learned that at the point we will need to be using that word. So that's why we call them tricky. They've got something tricky in them, but we try not to use anything by sight. Magic E. Yeah, we talk about magic E or a split digraph, and we go over the different split digraphs. And I have what I call my digraph glasses. So we go over, I've got to do it backwards here. So we go over, like, if it's in the word cake, so we go round the A, and then I go over the next letter, and I go round the E to show that those two letters are connected. Or we have the children holding cards with a K, an A, K, and an E, but the A and the E, the people are holding hands behind the K letter. And when they say the sound, those two have to say the A sound together. We say the A isn't actually silent, but it's changing the sound of the A. Yeah, we do lots of things like that. And there are ideas in the books. As I say, this is a very brief skate over the top of a lot of what we do. And there is a huge amount of detail within the book. How do we teach them nouns? Well, because we just teach each, you know, when we're covering that, we'll say this is a noun, it's a name word, and we give lots of examples of it. This is a verb, it's a doing word, this is the action, and lots of examples of it. We just keep going through and doing these things constantly and repeating it. Yeah, I will send the PowerPoint which SAAR will give to whoever asks for it, I presume. What else have we got here? Anything else?
Sara, there's a question that, like we have a story for every sound in Jolly Phonics, do we have stories or ideas for, teaching a topic in grammar?
We don't have a story as such, but we do have like the action and the colour. And like, as I say, verbs are normally bees. So we normally talk about bees and we talk about doing things. Adjectives, we normally start with snakes. As I say, we don't have to, we start with snakes and we talk about the long snake and the different colours. So although we don't have a story, we always have a sort of a theme and an idea to start you off and then tell you to apply it to lots of other things.
Yeah, great. I see there are a lot of questions, but we are time bound and I don't think we'll be able to take the questions. The audience, whoever has questions, please write to us and we'll revert on that. And thank you, Sara. It was a wonderful session.
And the other thing is, if you've got a question, read the book.
Yes.
The introduction has got an awful lot of information in, and it is much easier to be told the information, but actually there is a huge amount of information in the book.
No, because you really have to dive deep if you wanted more information on this.
Yeah.
So you need to pick up a grammar book, start teaching and use it in the schools actually.
Yeah.
If you like it. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was insightful. It was really informative and it was a delight to the audience. So very explicitly you've explained, Jolly Grammar in quite depth actually. So I think it gives, for the new ones, it's an overview, and those of you who started using it, so it's giving a lot of information for you to actually take that in the classrooms.
I think it's always nice to know where you start and where you're aiming for. And equally, if you're at the top end and you know where you get to, how did you start? Where do you start? What do you do with a 4 or 5-year-old who can't write, who knows nothing of this? How do you get them to be an 11-year-old who can do a sentence wall without even thinking about it?
Yes. The progression was really important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sara. Thank you, audience, for joining us for today. And just be tuned in for more information about our new webinars coming up. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Love to
have a
see
nice
you
weekend.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.